When a falling steel beam nearly crushes a billionaire CEO, the construction worker who rips her from the wreckage doesn't wait for gratitude. He vanishes into the chaos like smoke. Lena Ward has built empires on control, leverage, and calculated moves. But the man who saved her life won't take her calls, won't accept her rewards, and won't play by any rules she understands. Now she's hunting answers in a world where power means nothing and kindness costs everything. If you're ready for a story about what happens when two worlds collide and neither side knows how to surrender, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from so I can see how far this journey reaches. The steel beam fell without warning. One moment, Lena Ward was reviewing quarterly projections on her tablet in the backseat of her Mercedes, parked at the edge of the Riverside construction site. The next, the world exploded into a shriek of metal, the violent crunch of compacting steel, and the sharp crystalline burst of safety glass fragmenting across her shoulders. The impact drove the roof down onto the headrest behind her, crushing the leather interior like tinfoil. Her ears rang, her vision blurred. Somewhere beyond the spiderweb cracks spreading across the windshield, she could hear shouting, distant, muffled, utterly useless. She tried to move. Her right arm wouldn't respond. Her left hand clawed at the door handle, but the frame had buckled, trapping her inside a cage that smelled of hot metal and gasoline. Panic clawed up her throat. Lena Ward didn't panic. She closed billion-dollar deals in boardrooms that made grown men sweat. She stared down investors and regulators and hostile takeovers without flinching. But right now, in this crumpled steel coffin, she couldn't even draw a full breath. Then the door exploded outward. Not opened, exploded. Someone wrenched it off its hinges with a sound like a gunshot. And suddenly there was air, light, and a pair of hands gripping her shoulders with startling certainty. "Don't move your neck," a voice said, low and steady. "I've got you." She blinked through the haze. The man crouched beside her was broad-shouldered, dusty, his face streaked with sweat beneath a yellow hard hat. His hands were careful despite their size, one sliding behind her head to stabilize her spine, while the other reached across to unbuckle her seatbelt. "We're getting you out," he said. "On 3. 1, 2. He didn't wait for 3. He pulled her free in one smooth motion, cradling her weight as if she were made of glass, and carried her 20 feet from the wreckage before setting her down on solid ground. The world tilted. Lena's knees buckled, but his arm stayed firm around her back, keeping her upright. "Easy," he murmured. "You're okay. Just breathe." She tried. Her lungs felt crushed. Her vision swam. Somewhere behind him, she could see the mangled remains of her car, the steel beam still jutting from the roof like a spear, and the growing crowd of workers shouting into radios and pointing at the crane overhead. The man in front of her shrugged off his jacket, worn canvas frayed at the cuffs, and wrapped it around her shoulders. It smelled like sawdust and something faintly sweet, like fresh-cut pine. "Ambulance is coming," he said. "You're going to be fine." Then he turned to leave. "Wait!" Lena's voice cracked. She reached for his arm, but he was already moving, slipping back into the chaos of workers and machinery as if he'd never been there at all. She tried to follow, but her legs wouldn't cooperate, and by the time her site manager reached her side, the man was gone. Vanished. Like he'd been a ghost. "Ms. Ward, Jesus Christ, are you hurt? Can you hear me?" Her site manager, Derek, was pale, his hands shaking as he tried to steady her. "We need to get you checked out. The beam, it came loose from the crane. We don't know how—" "Who was that?" Lena interrupted, her voice sharper than she intended. "The man who pulled me out. Who was he?" Derek blinked. I don't know. One of the crew, maybe? I didn't see—" "Find him." Lena's fingers tightened around the canvas jacket still draped over her shoulders. "I want his name. Now." 3 hours later, Lena sat in a private room at Mercy General, staring at the x-rays that confirmed what the ER doctor had already told her. Miraculous, really? Just bruises, minor lacerations, and a mild concussion. She should have been crushed. The beam had weighed over 2 tons. If it had landed 6 inches to the left, if she'd been sitting forward instead of leaning back, if that man hadn't reached her in time, she cut the thought off. Lena Ward didn't deal in if. She dealt in what now. Her phone buzzed. Derek's name flashed on the screen. She answered on the first ring. Tell me you found him. Yeah, sort of. Derek sounded uncertain. His name's Caleb Brooks. Been on the crew for about 8 months. Foreman says he's solid, shows up early, keeps to himself, never complains. But here's the thing, Ms. Ward. When I told him you wanted to meet him, he said no. Lena's grip on the phone tightened. Excuse me? He said, and I'm quoting here, I'm glad she's okay, but I don't need anything. Tell her to take care of herself. Derek paused. Then he clocked out and left. For a long moment, Lena said nothing. The sterile white walls of the hospital room seemed to press in around her. People didn't say no to Lena Ward. They said yes, ma'am, and how high, and whatever you need. They scrambled for her attention, her approval, her favor. This man, this construction worker named Caleb Brooks, had saved her life and then walked away like it was nothing, like she was nothing. Ms. Ward? Derek's voice crackled through the line. Do you want me to... Get me his file, Lena said quietly. Everything. Address, work history, emergency contacts. I want it on my desk first thing tomorrow. She hung up before Derek could respond. The penthouse was too quiet when Lena returned that night. 53rd floor, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline, every surface polished to a mirror shine. It was beautiful. It was perfect. It was suffocating. She poured herself 2 fingers of scotch and stood at the window, watching the lights flicker across the harbor. Somewhere out there, Caleb Brooks was probably eating dinner, tucking his kid into bed. Derek had mentioned a daughter in the file notes, living a life that didn't revolve around quarterly earnings and hostile takeovers and steel beams falling from the sky. Lena pressed her palm against the glass. Her reflection stared back, ash blonde hair still perfect despite the afternoon's chaos. Tailored blouse only slightly wrinkled, the faint shadow of a bruise blooming along her collarbone. She looked composed, controlled, untouched. She didn't feel untouched. She felt like the ground had shifted beneath her feet, and she couldn't figure out which direction was up anymore. Caleb Brooks woke at 5 a.m. to the sound of his daughter singing in the next room. Not words, just a meandering melody that drifted through the thin walls of their apartment like birdsong. He lay still for a moment, eyes closed, letting the sound settle over him. Mia always woke up happy. It was one of the few things in his life that felt predictable, reliable, safe. He pushed himself out of bed and padded barefoot into the narrow kitchen. The apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, a galley kitchen that barely fit 1 person, a living room that doubled as a dining area and homework station. The pipes rattled when you turned on the shower. The heater clanked through the night. The landlord kept promising to fix the cracked tile in the bathroom, but never got around to it. Caleb didn't complain. It was clean. It was theirs. And it was more than he'd had 3 years ago when the divorce finalized, and he'd found himself starting over with a 6-month-old baby and a resume full of unfinished degrees. He started the coffee maker and pulled out the ingredients for pancakes. Mia loved pancakes. She loved them so much she'd once tried to convince him that pancakes were a vegetable because they were made from plants. Caleb had laughed so hard he'd burned an entire batch. "Morning, Bug," he called toward her room. "You awake?" "I'm teaching Mr. Whiskers how to fly." Mia's voice rang out, bright and certain. Caleb grinned. Mr. Whiskers was a stuffed elephant she'd gotten for her 4th birthday. Aerodynamics were not his strong suit. "How's that going?" "He keeps crashing into the pillow." A pause. "I think he needs a cape." "Probably." Caleb flipped the first pancake onto a plate and set it aside to cool. "Come eat, Bug. We've got 15 minutes before we need to leave." Mia appeared in the doorway a moment later, clutching Mr. Whiskers under one arm, her curls sticking up in every direction. She was wearing mismatched socks, one striped, one polka-dotted, and a t-shirt with a faded dinosaur on the front. She climbed into her chair at the tiny kitchen table and watched solemnly as Caleb set the pancake in front of her. "Extra syrup?" she asked hopefully. "Nice try." Caleb drizzled a modest amount over the top and handed her a fork. "Eat up, we're running late." "You always say we're running late," Mia observed, attacking the pancake with enthusiasm. "But we're never late." "That's because I always say we're running late." Caleb poured himself a cup of coffee and leaned against the counter. "It's called planning ahead." "Miss Parker says planning ahead is good." Mia chewed thoughtfully. She also says I should raise my hand before I talk, but I forget sometimes. Keep working on it. Caleb took a sip of his coffee, watching his daughter's face as she concentrated on cutting her pancake into increasingly smaller pieces. She had his eyes, dark, serious, but her mother's smile wide and unguarded. It hurt sometimes seeing Vanessa in her. Not because he missed his ex-wife, he didn't, but because Vanessa had made it clear she didn't want to be a mother, didn't want the weight of a child tying her down. She'd left when Mia was 6 months old, and aside from a handful of birthday cards and sporadic child support payments, she hadn't looked back. Caleb didn't blame her. Not anymore. People made choices. Vanessa had made hers. And Caleb had made his the moment the nurse placed Mia in his arms and she'd wrapped her tiny fist around his thumb. He'd made his choice, and he'd never regretted it. "Daddy?" Mia's voice pulled him back. She was looking at him with that solemn, searching expression she got sometimes, the one that made her seem older than 6. "Are you sad?" "No, Bug." Caleb set his coffee down and ruffled her curls. "Just thinking." "About what?" "About how lucky I am to have pancakes with the coolest kid in the world." Mia beamed. "I am pretty cool." "The coolest," Caleb agreed. "Now finish up. We've got 5 minutes." The construction site looked different in the morning light, calmer. The crane stood silent against the pale sky, the steel beams stacked neatly along the perimeter. The crew was already gathering near the trailers when Caleb arrived, hard hats in hand, coffee thermoses steaming in the cold air. He nodded to a few of the guys, Marco, who ran the welding crew, TJ, the foreman, a couple of newer hires whose names he hadn't learned yet. They nodded back. Nobody asked where he'd been yesterday. Nobody mentioned the accident. That was fine with Caleb. He didn't want to talk about it. He grabbed his gear from the trailer and headed toward the south corner of the site, where the foundation crew was pouring concrete. It was mindless work. Hold the form steady, keep the mix flowing, don't let it set unevenly. It was also backbreaking, exhausting, and exactly what Caleb needed. He liked working with his hands. He liked the way a building grew from nothing, piece by piece, until it became something solid and real. He used to love architecture for the same reason, the way a blueprint could transform into glass and steel and light. But that was a lifetime ago, before the money ran out, before Vanessa left, before he learned that degrees and dreams didn't pay the rent. "Brooks!" TJ's voice cut through the noise of the site. "Got a minute?" Caleb straightened, wiping his hands on his jeans. "What's up?" TJ was a big man, thick-shouldered, with a graying beard and a perpetual scowl that made him look meaner than he actually was. He jerked his chin toward the trailers. "Boss wants to see you. Office. Now." Caleb frowned. "Why?" "Hell if I know." TJ shrugged. "But when the lady who signs the checks asks for you by name, you don't keep her waiting." Caleb's stomach tightened. The lady who signs the checks, Lena Ward, the woman he'd pulled from the wreckage yesterday. The woman Derek had cornered him about before he'd clocked out, asking if he'd meet with her, accept some kind of reward, let her thank him properly. Caleb had said no, firmly, politely. He'd meant it. Apparently she hadn't gotten the message. "Tell her I'm busy," Caleb said, turning back toward the forms. "Brooks." TJ's voice was sharp now. "I'm not asking. Get your ass to the office." Caleb exhaled slowly. He didn't want this. He didn't want attention, didn't want gratitude, didn't want whatever Lena Ward thought she owed him. But TJ was his foreman, and arguing would only make things worse. "Fine," he muttered. "Give me 2 minutes." He peeled off his work gloves and headed toward the trailers, his jaw tight. The portable office sat at the far end of the site, a dingy metal box with a sagging roof and a door that stuck when you tried to close it. Caleb climbed the steps and knocked once before pushing inside. Lena Ward was sitting behind the desk. She looked different than she had yesterday, sharper, more controlled. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, her blouse crisp and white, her expression unreadable. She looked like money. She looked like power. She looked like someone who didn't belong in a construction trailer. "Mr. Brooks," she said, standing, "thank you for coming." "Didn't have much choice," Caleb replied. He stayed near the door, arms crossed. TJ made it pretty clear. Lena's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. I apologize for the heavy-handed approach. I wasn't sure you'd agree to meet otherwise. You were right. Caleb kept his tone level. I wouldn't have. Why not? Lena tilted her head, studying him. I wanted to thank you. Properly. You saved my life yesterday. And you're welcome. Caleb shifted his weight. But I don't need anything. You already said thanks. We're good. We're not good. Lena's voice sharpened, just a fraction. You pulled me out of a crushed car and then vanished before I could even learn your name. You refused to meet with me. You won't accept any form of gratitude. That's not normal, Mr. Brooks. Maybe not in your world. Caleb met her gaze steadily. But in mine, helping someone doesn't come with a receipt. Lena blinked. For a moment, she looked genuinely surprised. Then her expression smoothed back into something cooler, more guarded. I'm not trying to insult you, she said carefully. I'm trying to do the right thing. The right thing would be letting it go. Caleb turned toward the door. I'm glad you're okay, Ms. Ward, but I've got work to do. Wait. Lena's voice stopped him before he could leave. He glanced back. She was still standing behind the desk, her hands resting lightly on the surface, her posture perfectly composed. But something in her eyes looked uncertain, vulnerable. Why won't you let me help you? Caleb hesitated. It would be easy to walk away. Easy to shut this down and get back to work and pretend this conversation never happened. But something about the way she was looking at him, like she genuinely didn't understand, made him pause. Because I don't need help, he said finally. And because teaching my daughter that kindness comes with a price tag is the last thing I want to do. Lena's expression flickered. Your daughter? Yeah, Caleb's voice softened. She's 6, and if she ever pulls someone out of a wreck, I want her to walk away knowing she did the right thing, not wondering what she'll get for it. He left before Lena could respond. Lena stood in the empty trailer long after Caleb Brooks had gone. His words echoed in the silence, sharp and uncomfortable. Teaching my daughter that kindness comes with a price tag is the last thing I want to do. She replayed the sentence in her mind, trying to find the angle, the leverage, the hidden agenda. There had to be one. People didn't turn down opportunities. They didn't walk away from money, connections, advancement. They didn't look a billionaire CEO in the eye and tell her she was wrong. But Caleb Brooks had. Lena pressed her fingers against the edge of the desk. She'd built her entire life on the principle that everything had a price. Loyalty, silence, competence, love. You just had to figure out what someone wanted and offer it to them. That was how deals worked. That was how the world worked. Except apparently not in Caleb Brooks' world. She pulled out her phone and dialed Derek. He answered on the second ring. Ms. Ward? I need more information on Caleb Brooks, Lena said. Everything you can find. Educational background, previous employment, family situation. I want to know who this man is. Already on it, Derek replied. I'll have a full report by end of day. Good. Lena ended the call and stared out the small, grimy window of the trailer. Beyond the fence, the city stretched toward the horizon, a sprawl of glass and concrete and ambition. Somewhere in that sprawl, Caleb Brooks was pouring concrete and raising a 6-year-old daughter and living a life that didn't intersect with hers in any meaningful way. Except it did now. Whether he liked it or not. Because Lena Ward didn't leave debts unpaid, and she didn't walk away from puzzles she couldn't solve. That evening, Caleb stood at the kitchen sink, washing dishes while Mia worked on her homework at the table behind him. She was practicing spelling words, sounding them out under her breath in a sing-song rhythm that made him smile. C-A-T, cat, D-O-G, dog, B-I-R-D, bird. She paused. Daddy, how do you spell elephant? That's not on your list, Bug. But Mr. Whiskers wants to know. Caleb glanced over his shoulder. Mia was looking at him with wide, earnest eyes, her pencil poised over the paper. He bit back a laugh. E-L-E-P-H-A-N-T. That's a lot of letters. Mia frowned. Are you sure? Pretty sure. Caleb rinsed the last plate and set it in the drying rack. Finish your real homework first. Then we'll spell elephant. Mia sighed dramatically, but bent back over her paper. Caleb dried his hands and moved to the small couch in the corner of the living room, sinking into the worn cushions with a weariness that went bone deep. It had been a long day, longer than usual. Not because of the work, he was used to 12-hour shifts and aching muscles, but because Lena Ward's words kept circling back, sharp and persistent. "Why won't you let me help you?" He didn't need help. He'd learned a long time ago that the only person you could rely on was yourself. Vanessa had taught him that. So had his parents, in their own way, when they'd stopped returning his calls after he'd dropped out of school to take care of Mia. So had every boss, every landlord, every system that promised support and delivered bureaucracy instead. Caleb didn't resent it. Not anymore. He'd made peace with the fact that life was hard, and nobody was coming to make it easier. You just put your head down, did the work, and kept moving forward. That was enough. It had to be enough. "Daddy?" Mia's voice drifted over from the table. "Are you sad again?" Caleb looked up. She was watching him with that same searching expression from this morning, her spelling words forgotten. "No bug," he said gently, "just tired." "We could watch a movie," Mia offered. "That makes you less tired." Caleb smiled despite himself. "You just want to watch a movie." "Maybe," Mia grinned, "but also I want you to be happy." Something tightened in Caleb's chest. He crossed to the table and crouched beside her chair, brushing a curl away from her face. "I am happy," he said softly. "You know why?" "Why?" "Because I've got you." He tapped her nose. "Best kid in the whole world." Mia's smile widened. "The whole world?" "The whole world," Caleb confirmed. "Now, finish your spelling. Then we'll watch whatever you want." "Even the one with the singing fish?" "Even the one with the singing fish." Mia let out a delighted squeal and bent back over her homework, her pencil flying across the paper. Caleb straightened, watching her for a moment longer. This, right here, was enough. It had to be. Even if a part of him, buried deep and unacknowledged, wondered what it might feel like if it wasn't. Lena couldn't stop thinking about the jacket. It sat folded on the passenger seat of her new car, another Mercedes, identical to the one that had been crushed, still smelling faintly of sawdust and pine. She'd tried to have it cleaned and returned, but Derek had reported back that Caleb Brooks didn't want it. "He said you can keep it," Derek had explained, sounding baffled. "Or donate it. He doesn't care." Lena cared. She didn't know why, but she did. She pulled into the parking lot of Mia's elementary school just as the final bell rang. She'd spent the past 3 days digging into Caleb Brooks' life with the same focus she applied to hostile takeovers. She knew he'd attended State University on a partial scholarship for architecture. She knew he'd dropped out halfway through his junior year. She knew he'd worked a string of jobs, landscaping, warehouse shifts, retail, before landing at the construction site 8 months ago. She knew his daughter attended PS 47, that his ex-wife was listed as non-custodial on the school records, and that he'd never once missed a parent-teacher conference. She also knew that showing up at his daughter's school was crossing a line. She got out of the car anyway. The playground was chaos, kids spilling out of the building in bright backpacks and noisy clusters, parents gathering near the fence, teachers calling out reminders about homework and permission slips. Lena stood off to the side, scanning the crowd. She spotted Caleb almost immediately. He was crouched near the swings, eye level with a little girl in mismatched socks who was gesturing wildly with both hands, clearly in the middle of an important story. Caleb was nodding along, his expression serious, like whatever she was saying was the most crucial thing he'd heard all day. Lena's chest tightened. She didn't move. She just watched as Caleb listened as the little girl, Mia, presumably, threw her arms around his neck as he caught her easily and stood, swinging her onto his shoulders with a practiced motion that made Mia shriek with laughter. They headed toward the gate, Mia still chattering, Caleb still listening. They looked complete, whole, like a unit that didn't need anything or anyone else. Lena turned and walked back to her car before they could see her. "I saw her again today," Caleb said. It was late. Mia was asleep, her bedroom door cracked open just enough that Caleb could hear her breathing from the couch. He'd called his friend Marcus, one of the few people from his college days who'd stuck around after everything fell apart. And now he was sitting in the dark, phone pressed to his ear, trying to make sense of the knot in his chest. "The CEO?" Marcus asked. "The one you pulled out of the car?" "Yeah." Caleb rubbed a hand over his face. "She was at Mia's school, just standing there, watching." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "That's either really sweet or really creepy." "I don't know which," Caleb exhaled. "She keeps trying to thank me, Marcus. Keeps showing up, offering things. I told her no. I told her I don't need anything, but she won't let it go." "Maybe she feels like she owes you," Marcus suggested. "Rich people get weird about that stuff. They're used to buying their way out of uncomfortable feelings." "That's what I thought at first." Caleb leaned his head back against the couch. "But it's more than that. She looked lost, like she doesn't know what to do with herself." "Not your problem, man." "I know." Caleb closed his eyes. "But it feels like it's becoming my problem, whether I want it to or not." "So what are you going to do?" Caleb didn't answer right away. He thought about Lena Ward standing at the edge of the playground, her tailored coat and expensive shoes completely out of place among the chaos of kids and parents. He thought about the way she'd looked at him in the trailer, like she was trying to solve an equation that didn't have an answer. He thought about the jacket still sitting in her car, unclaimed and unwanted. "I don't know us," he said finally, "but I need to figure it out before this gets any more complicated." Marcus laughed softly. "Hate to break it to you, buddy, but I think it's already complicated." Caleb knew he was right. The complications arrived on a Tuesday morning in the form of an envelope slipped under Caleb's apartment door. He found it when he stumbled out of bed at 5 a.m., nearly stepping on the thick cream-colored paper. No return address, just his name written in elegant script across the front. Caleb picked it up, frowning, and carried it to the kitchen while the coffee maker gurgled to life. Inside was a single card, expensive cardstock, the kind that felt substantial in your hands, and a handwritten note. "Mr. Brooks, I owe you more than gratitude. I owe you honesty. I've been handling this poorly, and I apologize. I'm not trying to buy you or your principles. I'm trying to understand them. If you're willing, I'd like to invite you and your daughter to lunch this Saturday. No agenda, no strings, just a conversation between two people who started off on the wrong foot. The restaurant information is below. I hope you'll consider it. Lena Ward." Caleb read it twice, then set it on the counter and stared at it while his coffee brewed. The smart move was to throw it away. The smart move was to maintain the boundaries he'd already established and let this woman go back to her penthouse and her empire and leave him alone. But something about the note felt different than her previous attempts. Less transactional. More human. "Daddy?" Mia's sleepy voice drifted from her bedroom doorway. She was rubbing her eyes, Mr. Whiskers dangling from one hand. "Why are you up so early?" "Same time as always, Bug." Caleb crossed to her and scooped her up, settling her on his hip even though she was getting too big for it. "You're the one who's up early." "I had a dream about pancakes," Mia said seriously. "They were flying." "Were they wearing capes?" "Obviously." Mia rested her head on his shoulder. "Can we make some? The flying kind?" "I'll see what I can do." Caleb carried her to the kitchen and set her in her chair, then pulled out the pancake mix. His eyes kept drifting back to the envelope on the counter. Mia noticed. "What's that?" she asked, pointing. "Just a letter." Caleb measured out the flour, trying to sound casual. "From someone I met at work." "Is it important?" "Maybe." He cracked an egg into the bowl. "How would you feel about going to lunch on Saturday? Somewhere nice?" Mia's eyes went wide. "Like a restaurant with menus?" Caleb smiled despite himself. They didn't eat out often, couldn't afford to, most months. The fact that Mia considered a restaurant with menus a special occasion made his chest ache. "Yeah, Bug, with menus. Can I order whatever I want? Within reason?" "What's reason?" "Nothing that costs more than our rent." Caleb poured batter onto the griddle and watched it sizzle. "So probably not the lobster." Mia giggled. "I don't even like lobster. Miss Parker showed us a picture, and it looks scary." "Then we're good." Caleb flipped the first pancake onto her plate. "Eat up. We've got a big day ahead." He didn't mention that the lunch invitation came from a woman who'd been quietly haunting the edges of his life for the past week. He didn't mention that he was already regretting saying yes before he'd even confirmed. He just watched his daughter drown her pancakes in syrup and chatter about her dream, and tried not to think about what he was getting himself into. Lena spent Saturday morning in a state of low-grade panic that she refused to acknowledge as panic. She'd chosen the restaurant carefully, upscale enough to be comfortable, casual enough not to intimidate. She'd arrived 20 minutes early and claimed a corner table with good light and a view of the door. She'd rehearsed what she wanted to say at least a dozen times. And now, sitting alone with a glass of water she wasn't drinking, she felt like an idiot. What was she doing? She didn't chase after construction workers. She didn't extend lunch invitations to people who'd made it clear they wanted nothing to do with her. She didn't sit in restaurants feeling nervous about whether someone would show up. Except she did. Apparently. Because Caleb Brooks had gotten under her skin in a way she couldn't explain and didn't know how to fix. The door opened. Lena's head snapped up. Caleb walked in first, dressed in clean jeans and a button-down shirt that looked like it had been ironed with great care. Behind him, clutching his hand, was a little girl with wild curls and bright eyes and an expression of absolute wonder as she took in the restaurant's white tablecloths and gleaming silverware. Lena stood. "Mr. Brooks, thank you for coming." "Miss Ward," Caleb's tone was polite but guarded. "This is my daughter, Mia." "Hi, Mia." Lena crouched slightly, bringing herself to eye level with the girl. "I'm Lena. It's nice to meet you." Mia stared at her for a long moment, then looked up at Caleb. "She's really pretty," she whispered, not quietly enough. Caleb's ears went red. "Mia, it's okay." Lena smiled, surprised by how genuine it felt. "Thank you, Mia. You're pretty too. I love your socks." Mia glanced down at her feet. One sock had dinosaurs, the other had stars, and beamed. "I picked them myself." "Excellent choice." Lena gestured toward the table. Should we sit? I'm starving." They settled into chairs, Mia bouncing slightly with barely contained excitement. A waiter appeared almost immediately, menus in hand, and Mia's eyes went impossibly wider as she opened hers and saw the options. "Daddy," she breathed. "They have mac and cheese and chicken fingers and ice cream." "You have to eat real food first," Caleb said, but his voice was soft, indulgent. "Mac and cheese is real food." "Fair point." Caleb glanced at Lena, and for the first time since they'd met, something almost like amusement flickered across his face. "She's got a lawyer's instincts." "I can see that." Lena turned to Mia. "What do you think? Mac and cheese to start? Then we'll negotiate dessert." "Deal." Mia stuck out her hand, very serious. Lena shook it, and Mia dissolved into giggles. The waiter took their orders, mac and cheese for Mia, a burger for Caleb, a salad for Lena that she already knew she wouldn't finish, and then they were alone again. The silence stretched. Caleb's shoulders were tense, his hands resting on the table like he was ready to bolt at any moment. Lena took a breath. "I meant what I said in the note," she started. "I've been handling this badly. I'm used to solving problems with resources and leverage, and that doesn't work here. I see that now." Caleb studied her. "What changed?" "Honestly, you did." Lena folded her hands in her lap. "You're the first person in a very long time who's told me no. Not because you were negotiating for something better, not because you were playing an angle, just no. And I didn't know what to do with that. So you showed up at my daughter's school." Lena winced. "That was a mistake. I wasn't thinking clearly. She hesitated. "I wanted to understand who you were. Why you'd walk away from someone trying to help you." "Because I don't need help," Caleb said, his voice even. "I know that probably doesn't make sense to you, but I've got a job. I've got a place to live. I've got Mia. That's enough." "Is it?" The question slipped out before Lena could stop it. Caleb's expression shuddered immediately, and she raised a hand. "I'm not trying to insult you. I'm asking because I don't know. I've spent my whole life chasing more deals, more success, more control. I don't know what enough looks like." Mia, who'd been coloring on the paper placemat the waiter had provided, looked up. "Enough is when you're happy," she announced, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Both adults turned to stare at her. She blinked back, unperturbed. "That's what Daddy says." When I ask if we can get a bigger apartment or a puppy or a trampoline, he says we have enough to be happy. Right, Daddy? Caleb's throat worked. Right, Bug. See? Mia went back to her coloring, satisfied. Lena sat very still, out of the mouths of babes. She looked at Caleb, really looked at him, and saw something she'd missed before. Not resignation, not defeat, just peace. The kind of peace that came from knowing exactly where you stood and being okay with it. She envied him. God, she envied him. You're right, she said quietly. That is enough. And I'm sorry for implying it wasn't. Caleb's posture relaxed slightly. Why does this matter so much to you? Because you saved my life, Lena said, and because nobody's ever looked at me the way you did in that trailer, like I was the one who needed help understanding something basic about the world. That stuck with me. I didn't mean to. You were right, though. Lena cut him off gently. I was treating kindness like a transaction. I still don't fully know how to stop, but I'm trying. The food arrived, breaking the tension. Mia attacked her mac and cheese with enthusiasm, providing a running commentary on the texture, the cheese-to-pasta ratio, and whether it was better than the kind Daddy made at home. It's different, she decided finally. But yours is still the best. Caleb's expression softened. Thanks, Bug. They ate in a more comfortable silence after that. Lena asked Mia about school, and Mia launched into a detailed explanation of her art project. A collage of things that made her happy, which apparently included Mr. Whiskers, pancakes, and Daddy's laugh. Caleb looked like he might melt into the floor. Lena found herself smiling more than she had in months. What about you, Ms. Ward? Mia asked suddenly, pointing a forkful of mac and cheese in Lena's direction. What makes you happy? Lena opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. I don't know. Work, I guess. Closing a good deal. Seeing a project come together. Mia frowned. That's all work stuff. What about fun stuff? Mia, Caleb said quietly. That's a personal question. It's okay. Lena set down her fork, her appetite gone. She's right. I should have a better answer. She met Mia's curious gaze. I used to paint, watercolors. I haven't done it in years. Why not? Mia asked, genuinely puzzled. Because I got busy, and then I forgot how. Lena's voice was softer than she intended. Sometimes that happens when you're not paying attention. Mia considered this very seriously. Then she pulled a green crayon from the cup on the table and pushed it toward Lena. You can use mine, if you want to remember. Something cracked open in Lena's chest. She took the crayon, her hand shaking slightly, and drew a wobbly flower on the edge of her placemat. It was terrible. Childish, perfect. Thank you, Mia, she whispered. Mia grinned. You're welcome. Caleb was watching Lena with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not pity, not judgment, something softer, something that made her feel exposed in a way board meetings and hostile investors never had. After lunch, Mia insisted they walk to the park down the street. For digestion, she explained gravely. Ms. Parker says walking helps your tummy. Ms. Parker is very wise, Caleb said, trying not to laugh. He glanced at Lena. You don't have to. I'd like to, Lena interrupted, if that's okay. So they walked. Mia skipped ahead, stopping every few feet to examine an interesting leaf or pebble, while Caleb and Lena followed at a slower pace. The afternoon was clear and cool, the kind of autumn day that felt stolen from summer. Lena had forgotten what it felt like to walk without a destination, without a meeting to get to or a call to take. It was disorienting. It was wonderful. She's amazing, Lena said, watching Mia crouch to inspect a line of ants marching across the sidewalk. Your daughter. Yeah, Caleb's voice was thick with pride. She is. You're doing this alone? Mostly. Caleb shoved his hands in his pockets. Her mom's not in the picture. Hasn't been for a while. That must be hard. Sometimes, Caleb shrugged, but we make it work, and honestly, I wouldn't trade it. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. Lena thought about her own life. The late nights, the endless deals, the penthouse that echoed with emptiness. Do you ever regret it? Giving up architecture? Caleb was quiet for a long moment. I regret not finishing. I regret not having the chance to see what I could have built, but I don't regret choosing Mia. That was never a choice. That was just obvious. Not to everyone, Lena said softly. Some people would have walked away. Then they weren't meant to be parents. Caleb stopped walking and turned to face her. Look, Ms. Ward. Lena, she corrected. Please. Lena. He said her name carefully, like he was testing it out. I appreciate what you're trying to do here. I really do. But I need you to understand something. I'm not a project. I'm not a charity case. And I'm not looking to be rescued. I know that. Do you? Caleb's gaze was steady, because it feels like you're still trying to fix something that isn't broken. Maybe I am. Lena crossed her arms, not defensively, just protectively. Or maybe I'm just trying to figure out why you seem more content than anyone I've ever met, despite having less than almost anyone I know. That's a pretty condescending way of putting it. I didn't mean... Lena stopped, frustrated with herself. You're right. That came out wrong. I just mean, you have something I don't know how to get, and I'm trying to understand it. Caleb's expression softened slightly. You can't buy it, Lena, and you can't reverse engineer it. It's not a business strategy. Then what is it? It's just living. Caleb gestured vaguely at the park, where Mia was now attempting to climb a tree with more enthusiasm than skill. It's paying attention to the small stuff. It's being present. It's not always chasing the next thing. I don't know how to do that, Lena admitted. The words felt like a confession. Then maybe start by trying. Caleb's voice was gentler now. Not with me. Not with Mia. Just with yourself. Figure out what makes you happy that isn't about winning or achieving or proving something. What if there isn't anything? Then you build it. Caleb started walking again. That's what I did. When everything fell apart and I was alone with a baby and no plan, I had to figure out what mattered. Turned out it was pretty simple. Food, shelter, love. Everything else is just noise. Lena followed him, her mind spinning. She'd spent 20 years building an empire on the principle that everything else was the point, the success, the recognition, the power. And now this man in secondhand jeans was telling her it was all noise. The worst part was, she believed him. Daddy, Mia's voice rang out. Come push me on the swings. Duty calls. Caleb shot Lena a half smile and jogged over to the swing set. Lena stayed where she was, watching as he lifted Mia onto the seat and began pushing her, each arc higher than the last. Mia's laughter pealed through the air, bright and uncomplicated. Caleb was laughing too, saying something Lena couldn't hear that made Mia shriek with delight. Lena pulled out her phone. 3 missed calls, 7 emails flagged urgent, a calendar notification reminding her about a conference call in an hour. She stared at the screen for a long moment, then turned the phone off completely and slipped it back into her pocket. She walked over to the swings and sat on the empty one beside Mia. Can I swing too? Mia's face lit up. Yeah, Daddy, push Miss Lena. I can push myself, Lena started, but Caleb was already behind her, his hands on the chains. Just lean back, he said. His voice was close to her ear, warm and steady. I've got you. He pushed. Lena's stomach dropped as the swing carried her forward, then back, then forward, again. She hadn't been on a swing in 30 years. She'd forgotten the feeling, the momentary weightlessness, the rush of air, the irrational certainty that if you went high enough, you might actually fly. She heard herself laugh, surprised and breathless. Higher, Mia commanded from the swing beside her. Go higher, Ms. Lena. Lena kicked her legs, gaining momentum. For a few minutes, there was nothing but the rhythm of the swings, the blue sky overhead, and the ridiculous joy of doing something completely pointless. When they finally slowed to a stop, Lena's face hurt from smiling. That was fun, Mia declared. She hopped off her swing and tugged at Lena's hand. Come see the duck pond. Before Lena could respond, Mia was dragging her toward the far edge of the park, where a small pond glittered in the afternoon sun. Caleb trailed behind them, shaking his head but not intervening. The ducks scattered as they approached, then regrouped expectantly when Mia pulled a crumpled bag of bread from her jacket pocket. We always bring bread, Mia explained to Lena. The ducks get hungry. Here. She thrust a piece of bread into Lena's hand. You try. Lena tore off a small chunk and tossed it toward the water. A duck darted forward, snatched it up, and quacked indignantly for more. Mia giggled. He likes you. How can you tell? Because he's yelling at you. Mia threw another piece of bread. That means he trusts you. Lena glanced at Caleb, who was leaning against a tree nearby, arms crossed, a faint smile playing at his lips. Is that true? She asked. Duck psychology isn't my area of expertise, Caleb replied, but Mia's usually right about these things. They fed the ducks until the bread was gone, then sat on a bench overlooking the water. Mia wedged herself between them, swinging her legs and humming a song that had no discernible melody. Lena found herself relaxing in a way she didn't know how to name. This wasn't a negotiation, it wasn't a performance, it was just sitting. Being present, like Caleb had said. Thank you for today, Lena said quietly when Mia got up to chase a butterfly. I needed this more than I realized. You're welcome. Caleb's tone was neutral, but not unkind. But, Lena, this can't become a thing. A thing. You showing up, trying to be part of our lives. Caleb met her gaze. I don't want Mia getting attached to someone who's going to disappear when the novelty wears off. I wouldn't... Lena stopped. She wanted to promise she wouldn't do that, but how could she? She didn't know what she wanted. She didn't know if this feeling, this fragile, tentative warmth, would last past today. You're right, she said finally. I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking about how this might affect her. I know. Caleb's expression softened. You're trying. I see that. But trying isn't enough when there's a kid involved. Lena nodded, her throat tight. She watched Mia spin in circles, arms outstretched, head tilted back to watch the clouds. She looked so free, so unburdened. Everything Lena hadn't been since she was 8 years old, and her father told her that weakness was the same as failure. I should go, Lena said, standing. Let you two get back to your afternoon. Miss Lena, Mia ran over, slightly dizzy from spinning. Are you leaving? I am, sweetheart, but thank you for sharing your park with me. Lena crouched down. And your ducks, and your crayons. Mia threw her arms around Lena's neck in a spontaneous hug. Lena froze, then slowly, carefully, hugged her back. The girl smelled like sugar and sunlight. When Mia pulled away, she was grinning. You can come back any time, right, Daddy? Caleb's jaw tightened. We'll see, Bug. Lena straightened. Goodbye, Caleb. Mia. She walked away before her voice could crack, before she could see the look on Caleb's face that she knew would be equal parts relief and regret. That night, Lena sat alone in her penthouse with a glass of wine she didn't drink and a city view she didn't see. She kept thinking about Mia's question. What makes you happy? She kept thinking about the green crayon and the wobbly flower and the way Caleb had looked at his daughter like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Lena had built an empire. She'd outlasted competitors, outmaneuvered adversaries, and outworked everyone who'd ever doubted her. She had money, power, respect. She had everything she'd ever wanted, and she was so goddamn lonely she could barely breathe. Her phone buzzed. A text from Derek. Budget meeting moved to Monday. Also, the Riverside project is 2 weeks ahead of schedule. Brooks' crew has been killing it. Lena stared at Caleb's name on the screen. She could make his life easier. She could offer him opportunities, advancement, security. She could do all of that and tell herself it wasn't about buying his affection or easing her own guilt. She could do it and believe it was just good business, but it would be a lie. She deleted the text without responding, set her phone aside and stared out at the city until the lights blurred together and she couldn't tell where one ended and another began. 2 weeks passed in deliberate silence. Lena threw herself into work with the kind of intensity that made her assistants nervous and her board members wary. She stayed late every night, reviewing contracts that didn't need reviewing, attending meetings that could have been emails, filling every minute with noise so she wouldn't have to sit with the quiet. But the quiet found her anyway, in the gaps between phone calls, in the elevator rides up to her empty penthouse, in the moments right before sleep when her mind would drift back to a park bench and a little girl's laughter and the feeling of a swing carrying her toward the sky. She didn't contact Caleb. She didn't show up at the construction site or the school or anywhere else he might be. She kept her promise, even though it felt like swallowing glass. But she couldn't stop thinking about what he'd said. Figure out what makes you happy that isn't about winning or achieving or proving something. So she tried. She went to an art supply store on a Saturday morning and stood in the paint aisle for 20 minutes, overwhelmed by choices. Before a clerk asked if she needed help, she bought watercolors, brushes, paper, expensive versions of everything because she didn't know how else to make decisions. She brought them home and set them up on her dining room table and stared at the blank paper until the light outside turned golden and then gray and then black. She couldn't remember how to start. On Monday morning, Derek knocked on her office door with an expression that meant trouble. "We've got a situation at Riverside," he said without preamble. "Safety inspector found some code violations. Nothing major, but enough to halt work until we bring everything up to standard." Lena looked up from her laptop. "How long?" 2 weeks, maybe 3, and that's if we prioritize it. Derek shifted his weight. "Thing is, it's going to cost us. The violations are mostly in the foundation work, drainage issues, some improper reinforcement. We'll need to bring in a structural engineer to sign off on the fixes. Then bring one in." "I tried. The firm we usually work with is booked solid. I've reached out to 2 others, but they're not available for at least a month." Derek hesitated. "There is one other option." Lena's stomach tightened. "What option?" "Caleb Brooks." Derek pulled out his tablet and turned it toward her. "I was going through his file again, and I noticed he's got credits toward an architecture degree with a focus on structural engineering. He never finished, but he completed most of the advanced coursework. If we could get him to consult on this, he'd know what needs fixing and how to do it properly." "No." The word came out too sharp. Lena softened her tone. "Find someone else." "Ms. Ward, with all due respect, we're running out of options. This is costing us $50,000 a day in delays. If Brooks can help us resolve it faster—" "I said no, Derek." Lena closed her laptop with more force than necessary. "That's final." Derek studied her for a moment, clearly confused, but smart enough not to push. "Understood. I'll keep looking." He left. Lena sat very still in her chair, staring at the city skyline through her office window. This was exactly what Caleb had warned her about. Using her position, her resources, her power to insert herself back into his life under the guise of legitimate business. It would be so easy. She could frame it as an opportunity for him, a chance to use his training, a path back toward the career he'd had to abandon. She could tell herself she was helping, but she'd be lying. She picked up her phone, then set it back down. Picked it up again, put it down. Finally, she stood and grabbed her coat. "Cancel my afternoon meetings," she told her assistant on the way out. "I need to take care of something." Caleb was pouring concrete when he saw her. The sun was brutal overhead, turning the construction site into a blast furnace, and he'd stripped down to a t-shirt hours ago. His shoulders ached, his hands were raw despite the gloves, and he was covered in enough dust that he probably looked like a ghost. He didn't notice Lena until she was standing 10 feet away, still dressed in her business clothes, looking completely out of place among the equipment and debris. He straightened slowly, wiping his forearm across his forehead. "Ms. Ward." "Lena," she corrected automatically. She looked uncomfortable, her hands clasped in front of her like she didn't know what to do with them. "I'm sorry to show up unannounced. I know you asked me not to." "Then why are you here?" Caleb kept his voice neutral, but his guard was up. 2 weeks of silence, and now this. Nothing good came from this kind of interruption. "Because I need your help." Lena took a breath. "And because I'm trying to do this the right way, which means asking instead of assuming." Caleb set down his tools and gestured for her to follow him away from the worksite, toward the relative quiet of the equipment shed. Once they were out of earshot of the crew, he crossed his arms. "What kind of help?" Lena explained the situation, the code violations, the delays, the lack of available structural engineers. Her voice was crisp, professional, like she was presenting to a board meeting. But Caleb could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she wouldn't quite meet his eyes. "So you want me to do the job?" he said when she finished. "I want to hire you as a consultant, temporarily. just long enough to assess the violations and oversee the corrections. Lena finally looked at him directly. I'll pay you a consultant's rate, triple what you're making now, and it would only be for a few weeks. Triple. Caleb let out a slow breath. Triple his current rate would cover 3 months of rent. It would let him fix the leak in Mia's ceiling that he'd been patching with buckets. It would give him breathing room he hadn't had in years. That's generous. It's fair market rate for someone with your qualifications. Except I don't have qualifications. I never finished my degree. You have the knowledge, Lena countered, and the experience. Derek showed me your work on this site. You're the one who caught the drainage issue in Sector 3 before it became a problem. You redesigned the temporary support structures when the original plans didn't account for the soil composition. You're doing structural engineering work already. This would just be official. Caleb looked away, his jaw tight. She was right. He knew she was right. But accepting this felt like stepping onto a path he'd spent years avoiding. Why does it matter to you? You could wait for another engineer. Eat the delays. You've got the money. Because you told me to stop trying to fix things that aren't broken, Lena said quietly. And you were right. But this is broken. This project is broken. And you're the person who can fix it. Not because I owe you something. Not because I'm trying to manage my guilt. But because you're actually qualified. And you're here. And it has nothing to do with you wanting to see me again? Lena flinched. I won't lie to you, Caleb. Seeing you again would be complicated. But if you take this job, I'll stay out of your way. I'll work through Derek. You won't have to deal with me. Then why come here yourself? Why not just send Derek with the offer? Because you deserve the respect of a direct conversation. Lena's voice was steady now. And because I wanted you to be able to say no to my face if that's what you need to do. Caleb studied her. The Lena Ward standing in front of him looked different than the woman who'd cornered him in the trailer weeks ago. Less polished, more uncertain, like she was trying to balance on ground that kept shifting beneath her feet. He recognized that feeling. He'd lived it for years. I need to think about it, he said finally. Of course. Lena reached into her bag and pulled out a business card. My direct line is on there. Call me when you decide, or don't. Either way, I won't show up again without an invitation. She turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, Caleb, I meant what I said at the park. You have something I don't know how to find, and I'm not trying to take it from you. I'm just trying to figure out how to build it for myself. Then she walked away, her heels clicking against the concrete until the sound faded into the noise of the construction site. Caleb stood there for a long time, turning the business card over in his hands. Triple his current rate, a chance to use the skills he'd buried, a way forward that didn't involve pouring concrete until his back gave out. It should have been an easy decision, but nothing about Lena Ward had been easy from the start. Tick. That night, Caleb sat at the kitchen table with Mia's homework spread out in front of him and his mind somewhere else entirely. Mia was practicing subtraction, tongue poking out in concentration as she worked through the problems. She'd gotten better at math over the past month, but she still counted on her fingers when she thought he wasn't looking. Daddy? Mia's voice pulled him back. You're doing the staring thing again? What staring thing? The thing where you look at stuff but you're not really seeing it. Mia tapped his hand with her pencil. Ms. Parker says that means you're worried about something. Ms. Parker talks about me? Only when I ask. Mia grinned, unrepentant. So what are you worried about? Caleb hesitated. He tried not to burden Mia with adult problems, but she was perceptive enough that hiding things usually backfired. I got offered a different job today, just temporary, but it would mean more money and different kind of work. Different how? Remember how I told you I used to study buildings, how to design them and make them strong? Mia nodded. You said you were really good at it. This job would let me do that again, just for a little while. Caleb leaned back in his chair. But it's complicated. Because of Ms. Lena? Mia asked, too casually. Caleb blinked. How did you... She's the one who came to your work today, right? Mia set down her pencil. I heard you talking on the phone with Uncle Marcus. You said her name. Caleb made a mental note to be more careful about where he took phone calls. Yeah, she's the one offering the job. I like her, Mia said simply. She was nice to me, and she's really sad. How do you know she's sad? Because she smiles with her face, but not her eyes. Mia demonstrated, stretching her mouth wide while keeping her eyes serious. See? That's a sad smile. Caleb's chest tightened. 6 years old, and his daughter could already read people better than most adults. You're pretty smart, Bug. I know. Mia picked her pencil back up. Are you going to take the job? I don't know yet. What do you think I should do? Mia considered this with the same gravity she applied to choosing between strawberry and chocolate ice cream. I think you should do what makes you happy, but also what helps people. Like when you helped Ms. Lena when her car got smashed. She looked up at him. If you can do building stuff again, that would make you happy, right? Yeah, Caleb admitted. It would. Then you should do it. Mia returned to her homework, the matter settled in her mind. If only it were that simple, Caleb thought. But Mia had a point. He'd spent 3 years telling himself he was fine, that he didn't need more than what he had. And that was true. But it didn't mean he couldn't want more. It didn't mean he had to punish himself forever for the way his life had turned out. He pulled out his phone and stared at Lena's number for a long time before finally typing out a message. I'll do it, but we need to set some ground rules first. The response came almost immediately, like she'd been waiting by her phone. Name them. Caleb typed carefully, thinking through each word. This is professional only. You stay out of the field work unless absolutely necessary. I report to Derek, not you. And when this project is done, we go back to our separate lives. No more surprise visits, no more lunch invitations, no more anything. Agreed? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. Agreed. Thank you, Caleb. He set the phone down and tried to ignore the complicated knot in his chest. Relief, anxiety, anticipation. He couldn't untangle which was which. All right, Bug, he said, forcing his attention back to Mia. Let's finish this homework. Then we'll see what's on TV. Can we watch the one with the singing fish? I thought you said that one was boring. I changed my mind. Mia grinned at him. People are allowed to change their minds, right? Yeah, Caleb said quietly. They are. The next morning, Caleb showed up at the construction site office trailer at 7 a.m. sharp, wearing his cleanest work clothes and carrying a notebook he'd found at the bottom of a box marked college stuff. Derek was already there, coffee in hand, looking relieved. Brooks, thank God. Derek gestured to the table covered in blueprints and inspection reports. I've got everything laid out. The inspector's main concerns are here, here, and here. He pointed to sections marked in red. Drainage in foundation zones 2 and 5, inadequate rebar spacing in zone 3, and some settling issues in zone 7 that might indicate soil instability. Caleb set down his notebook and leaned over the plans, his eyes scanning the markings. It had been years since he'd read structural blueprints professionally, but the language came back instantly, like muscle memory. He could see the problems immediately, not just what the inspector had flagged, but why they'd happened and what would be needed to fix them. Zone 2's drainage can be corrected with additional French drains and a revised grading plan, he said, his voice steady and sure. Zone 3 needs supplemental rebar, but we can do that without tearing out the existing work if we sister the current bars properly. Zone 7. He paused, frowning. Zone 7's going to be more complicated. If the soil's unstable, we need to bring in a geotechnical engineer before we do anything else. Derek was staring at him. You got all that from a 2-minute look? It's not complicated if you know what you're looking for. Caleb straightened. I'll need to do a full site assessment today. Walk every flagged zone, take measurements, verify what the inspector reported. Then I can give you a detailed remediation plan by tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning? Derek looked skeptical. That's fast. That's the job. Caleb met his eyes. Ms. Ward said you're losing $50,000 a day in delays. I'm here to stop the bleeding, but I need full site access, a couple of the senior crew members to help with measurements, and for everyone to stay out of my way while I work. Derek grinned. You got it. I'll spread the word. He grabbed his radio and started issuing instructions. Within minutes, the crew was being reassigned, equipment was being moved, and Caleb was being handed a hard hat and a site access badge. For the first time in 3 years, Caleb felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Lena tried to keep her promise. She stayed in her office, worked through Derek, reviewed Caleb's reports without comment. But she found herself watching the construction site feed on her laptop more than she cared to admit, catching glimpses of him moving through the space with an authority she hadn't seen before. He was different here. Not the quiet, guarded man she'd met in the trailer, but someone confident and decisive, pointing at structures and explaining things to the crew with gestures that made them nod and move immediately. This was who he'd been meant to be, she realized, before life got in the way. On the third day, Derek forwarded her Caleb's full assessment report. It was 20 pages long, meticulously detailed, with hand-drawn diagrams and calculations that showed not just what was wrong, but 3 different approaches to fixing it, each with cost analyses and time estimates. It was the kind of work she'd pay a senior structural engineer 6 figures to produce. Caleb had done it in 72 hours. She picked up her phone before she could stop herself and dialed his number. He answered on the second ring, sounding distracted. "Ward, it's Lena. I read your report." A pause. And it's brilliant." She meant it. "Derek said you've already started implementing Phase 1. How's it going?" "On schedule. We'll have Zone 2 corrected by end of day, Zone 3 by Friday." His tone was professional, clipped. "Was there something specific you needed?" "No, I just—" Lena stopped, unsure how to finish. "I wanted to hear your voice. I wanted to tell you I was right about you. I wanted to say that watching you work reminds me of what it feels like to care about something beyond the bottom line. I wanted to say thank you for taking this on. You're paying me well. No thanks necessary." Still, Lena pressed her fingers against her temple, suddenly tired. "It matters. What you're doing." Another pause, longer this time. "Lena, we agreed. I know what we agreed." She cut him off gently. "I'm not trying to overstep. I just wanted you to know that your work is valued, that's all." She heard him exhale slowly. "Okay. Thank you for saying that." "You're welcome." She should hang up. She should let him get back to work and stop finding excuses to talk to him. "Caleb?" "Yeah? Are you happy? Doing this work again?" The silence stretched so long she thought he might not answer. Then quietly, "Yeah, I am." "Good." Lena's throat felt tight. "That's good." She hung up before she could say anything else stupid and sat staring at her phone screen until it went dark. By Friday afternoon, Caleb had corrected 3 of the 4 flagged zones and was waiting on the geotechnical engineer's report for Zone 7. The crew had started looking at him differently, less like a temporary consultant and more like someone whose opinion mattered. TJ had even asked him to review the plans for the next phase of construction, just to make sure they weren't setting themselves up for more problems. Caleb was in the middle of comparing soil samples when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Mr. Brooks?" An unfamiliar female voice. "This is Principal Reeves from PS-47. I'm calling about Mia." Caleb's stomach dropped. "What's wrong? Is she hurt?" No, she's fine physically. But there was an incident at lunch today. Another student made some comments about her clothes, and Mia pushed him. We've got her in the office now, but I need you to come pick her up." "I'll be there in 15 minutes. Eat." Caleb was already moving, grabbing his jacket, shouting to TJ that he had an emergency. He made it to his truck in under a minute and drove probably faster than he should have, his mind racing. Mia didn't push people. She was sweet and gentle and almost pathologically kind. Someone must have said something really bad to get that reaction out of her. He found her sitting in a chair outside the principal's office, her eyes red-rimmed, her arms crossed tight over her chest. She looked small and miserable and furious all at once. "Hey, Bug," Caleb said softly, crouching in front of her. "You okay?" "He said my clothes were ugly," Mia whispered, her voice shaking. "He said only poor kids wear the same shirt twice in 1 week, and he said—" Her voice broke. "He said maybe if my mom loved me, she'd buy me better clothes." Rage, white hot and instant, flooded through Caleb. He took a breath, forced it down, focused on his daughter. "What did you do?" "I pushed him." Mia's chin lifted defiantly. "He fell down. I'm not sorry." "Okay, Caleb pulled her into his arms, holding her tight while she shook. Okay, Bug, we'll figure this out. The meeting with Principal Reeves was exactly as awful as Caleb expected. The other kid, some smug 8-year-old whose parents were probably on the PTA board, was sitting there with a theatrical ice pack on his elbow, milking the injury for everything it was worth. His mother kept using words like violent and unacceptable and appropriate consequences. Caleb listened with his jaw clenched, watching his daughter shrink into herself with every word. Finally, he'd had enough. Did anyone ask why Mia pushed him? He interrupted. The mother bristled. That's not relevant. It's absolutely relevant. Caleb kept his voice level with effort. Your son bullied my daughter. He made fun of her clothes and said her mother didn't love her. That's why she pushed him. And if you're looking for an apology, you're going to be waiting a long time. Mr. Brooks, Principal Reeves said carefully, we have a zero-tolerance policy for physical altercations. Then you should be talking to the kid who started it. Caleb stood. Come on, Mia. We're leaving. He took his daughter's hand and walked out, ignoring the protests behind him. They made it to the parking lot before Mia started crying in earnest, big, hiccuping sobs that shook her whole body. Caleb picked her up and held her while she cried, whispering that she was brave and strong and that he was proud of her for standing up for herself, even if pushing wasn't the right way to do it. I didn't mean to get in trouble, Mia sobbed into his shoulder. I'm sorry, Daddy. I know, Bug. It's okay. We'll figure it out. But as he drove home with Mia silent in the back seat, Caleb couldn't shake the sick feeling in his stomach. He couldn't buy his daughter new clothes every week. He couldn't change the fact that they lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in a part of town that parents like that woman looked down on. He couldn't protect Mia from every cruel kid or every thoughtless comment about the life they lived. He pulled into their parking lot and sat there for a moment, staring at the cracked concrete and graffitied dumpster and the knowledge that this was the best he could do. Triple his consulting rate still wouldn't be enough to move somewhere better, to give Mia the kind of life where nobody questioned whether her mother loved her based on her goddamn clothes. His phone buzzed. A text from Derek. Final payment for consulting work just processed. Check should hit your account Monday. Great work this week. Caleb closed his eyes. The money would help. It always helped. But it wouldn't fix this. Nothing could fix this except time and hope and the slim chance that someday things would be different. He got out of the truck and opened Mia's door. Come on, Bug, let's go inside. That night, after Mia finally fell asleep, clutching Mr. Whiskers like a lifeline, Caleb sat on the couch and let himself fall apart in the quiet darkness of their tiny apartment. He didn't cry. He was too tired to cry. He just sat there, feeling the weight of every choice he'd ever made pressing down on his shoulders, and wondered how much longer he could carry it alone. His phone lit up with another text. Lena's name on the screen. Derek told me the project wrapped ahead of schedule. Thank you for everything. I hope we can work together again someday. Caleb stared at the message for a long time. Then he typed back, Thank you for the opportunity. Take care. He almost left it there. Professional, clean, final. But his fingers kept moving. And Lena? You asked me once what makes me happy. The answer is Mia. Just Mia. Everything else is just trying to make sure she's okay. That's all any of this has ever been about. He sent it before he could second-guess himself, then turned off his phone and went to check on his daughter one more time before bed. Lena read Caleb's message 3 times before setting her phone down with shaking hands. She sat in her penthouse, surrounded by glass and steel and the kind of view people paid millions for, and felt the walls closing in. Everything else is just trying to make sure she's okay. The raw honesty of it gutted her. Here was a man who'd stripped his life down to its most essential truth, who knew exactly what mattered and refused to apologize for it, and she didn't know how to exist in a world that simple. She picked up her phone again, started typing a response, then deleted it. Started again. Deleted again. What could she possibly say that wouldn't sound hollow or patronizing or like she was once again trying to insert herself into a life that had made it clear there was no room for her? Finally, she just wrote, She's lucky to have you. Then she set the phone aside and stared at the watercolor supplies still sitting untouched on her dining room table. The blank paper mocked her. For 3 weeks, she'd been telling herself she'd start tomorrow, next weekend, when things were less busy. But things were never less busy because she made sure of it. She filled her calendar deliberately, strategically, so there was never space for the kind of quiet that forced her to confront what Caleb had seen immediately, that she'd built an empire and forgotten to build a life. She stood abruptly, grabbed her coat, and left the penthouse without a destination in mind. The doorman looked surprised to see her at 9 p.m. on a Friday without a car waiting. "Miss Ward, do you need me to call?" No, thank you. I'm just walking." She pushed through the doors before he could ask more questions. The city was alive in that particular Friday night way, full of people heading to dinner or bars or shows, laughing in groups, holding hands, existing in the world with an ease Lena had never mastered. She walked for blocks, then miles, her heels clicking against the pavement until her feet ached. She passed restaurants with warm light spilling onto the sidewalk, heard music and conversation and the sound of people living lives that didn't require quarterly reports or board meetings or hostile takeovers. She found herself standing outside PS 47 without realizing she'd been heading there. The playground was dark and empty, the swings swaying slightly in the breeze. She could see the spot where Caleb had pushed Mia, where she'd sat on the swing beside them and laughed like she'd forgotten how. It felt like a lifetime ago. It felt like yesterday. Lena's phone buzzed. Her assistant. "Reminder, Tokyo call at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Also, the merger papers need your signature before Monday." She stared at the message, then at the empty playground, then back at her phone. Tomorrow she'd wake up at 5:30, take the call, review the papers, attend 3 meetings, work through lunch, and collapse into bed around midnight, having accomplished everything and felt nothing. Next week would be the same. Next month, next year. An endless succession of days that looked impressive on paper and felt like drowning. She turned her phone off completely and kept walking. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of autumn sunshine that made everything look golden and possible. Caleb woke to find Mia already up, sitting at the kitchen table with her coloring book spread out in front of her. She'd been quieter since the incident at school, less prone to her usual chatter and spontaneous songs. It broke his heart. "Morning, Bug," he said, starting the coffee maker. "How'd you sleep?" "Okay." Mia didn't look up from her coloring. She was working on a picture of a house, filling in the windows with careful strokes of blue crayon. "Daddy?" "Yeah." "Do you think I'm poor?" Caleb's hand froze on the coffee pot. He set it down carefully and moved to sit beside her. "Why are you asking that?" "Because of what Jaden said, about my clothes." Mia's voice was small. "Are we poor?" Caleb took a breath, choosing his words carefully. "We don't have as much money as some families, that's true. But we have everything we need. We have a home, food, clothes that keep you warm. We have each other. That's not poor, Bug. That's just different." "But why don't we have more money?" Mia finally looked at him, her eyes serious. "You work really hard, harder than anyone. Sometimes working hard isn't enough." Caleb pulled her onto his lap, even though she was getting too big for it. "Sometimes life is complicated and things don't go the way you planned, but that doesn't mean we're doing anything wrong, and it definitely doesn't mean you should feel bad about who we are." Mia was quiet for a moment, processing. "I don't feel bad about us. I just feel bad that kids are mean about it." "I know, and I'm sorry that happened." Caleb pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "But you know what? The people who matter don't care what kind of clothes you wear or where you live. They care about who you are. And you, Mia Brooks, are pretty incredible. Even when I push people?" "Even then." Caleb smiled despite himself. "Though maybe we work on using our words next time, yeah?" "Yeah." Mia leaned against him. "Can we go to the park today? I want to feed the ducks." "Sure, Bug, whatever you want." They spent the morning in their usual routine, pancakes, cartoons, cleaning up the apartment while Mia provided a running commentary on everything Mr. Whiskers was supposedly doing. By the time they made it to the park, the sun was high and warm, and Mia's spirits had lifted enough that she was skipping again. The ducks recognized them immediately, gathering expectantly as Mia pulled out the bag of bread she'd insisted on bringing. "Hi, ducks," she called, tossing chunks into the water. "Did you miss me?" "I missed you." Caleb stood back, watching her with that familiar mix of love and worry that defined most of his days. She deserved so much more than he could give her. She deserved new clothes and a bigger apartment and a world where cruel kids couldn't make her doubt herself. She deserved Caleb? He turned and his heart stopped. Lena was standing 10 feet away, dressed in jeans and a sweater that looked like they'd never been worn before, her hair loose around her shoulders, holding a paper bag from the bakery near his apartment. She looked uncertain and hopeful and completely out of place, and Caleb's first instinct was to tell her to leave, but Mia had already spotted her. "Miss Lena!" She ran over, her face lighting up. "Are you here to feed the ducks too?" "Actually, I brought muffins." Lena held up the bag, her eyes flicking to Caleb. "I was hoping I might run into you. I know I said I wouldn't show up without an invitation, but..." She stopped, seeming to realize how this looked. "I can go. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have..." "You brought muffins?" Mia interrupted, practical as always. "What kind?" "Blueberry and chocolate chip." Lena crouched down to Mia's level. "I wasn't sure which you'd like, so I got both." "I like both." Mia glanced back at Caleb. "Daddy, can Ms. Lena stay? Please?" Caleb's jaw was tight. He should say no. He should enforce the boundaries they'd agreed on and send Lena back to her world before this got any more complicated. But Mia was looking at him with those hopeful eyes, and Lena looked like she might shatter if he rejected her again, and he was so goddamn tired of being the one who had to be strong all the time. "Yeah," he said quietly. "She can stay." Mia cheered and grabbed Lena's hand, dragging her toward the bench. Lena caught Caleb's eye as she passed, mouthing thank you with an expression that looked like relief and regret mixed together. They sat on the bench eating muffins and watching the ducks while Mia provided commentary. "That one's Gerald," she explained to Lena, pointing at a particularly aggressive mallard. "He's the boss. And that one's Penelope. She's shy, but really nice once you get to know her." "You've named all the ducks?" Lena asked, genuinely charmed. "Just the important ones." Mia tore off a piece of muffin and threw it into the water. "There's like 50 ducks here. That would be too many names." "Very practical," Lena agreed. She glanced at Caleb, who was sitting stiffly at the other end of the bench, clearly uncomfortable. "Caleb, I really am sorry for showing up like this. I wasn't planning to. I just..." She paused. "I've been walking a lot, trying to figure things out, and I ended up here without really meaning to." "You ended up at the park near my apartment with muffins from the bakery down my street?" Caleb's tone was skeptical. "That's one hell of a coincidence." "Okay, it wasn't entirely a coincidence." Lena set her muffin down, her appetite gone. "I wanted to see you, both of you. I know I promised I wouldn't, but I've been going crazy sitting in my apartment thinking about..." She stopped, suddenly aware that Mia was listening. "I read your message, Ed, about Mia being what makes you happy. And I realized I don't have that. I don't have anything that matters that way. And I didn't know what to do with that realization except walk, and walking brought me here." Caleb looked at her for a long moment. "Lena, we can't keep doing this. You can't keep showing up every time you feel lonely or lost or whatever this is. That's not fair to any of us." "I know." Lena's voice cracked slightly. "I know, and I'm sorry. I'll go. I just wanted to..." She stood abruptly. "I don't even know what I wanted. I'm sorry." "Wait." Mia grabbed Lena's sleeve before she could leave. "Are you sad again, like at the restaurant?" Lena knelt down, her eyes bright. "A little bit, sweetie. But that's not your problem to fix." "But you fixed Daddy's car problem," Mia said with 6-year-old logic. "So we should fix your sad problem. That's fair." "It doesn't work like that, Bug," Caleb said gently. "Some things people have to fix themselves." "But she doesn't know how." Mia looked between them, frustrated. "That's why she's here, right? Because she doesn't know how to not be sad, and Daddy, you know how to be happy even when things are hard. So maybe you could teach her?" Out of the mouths of babes. Caleb felt something shift in his chest, resistance giving way to reluctant understanding. Lena wasn't here because she wanted to buy him, or change him, or absorb his life into hers. She was here because she was drowning, and he was the only person who'd ever told her the truth about what she was missing. "Mia, go feed the rest of the bread to the ducks," he said quietly. "Miss Lena and I need to talk for a minute." Mia looked like she wanted to argue, but something in Caleb's tone stopped her. She took the bread bag and walked toward the water, glancing back every few seconds to make sure they were still there. Caleb waited until she was out of earshot, then turned to Lena. "What do you want from me? Really?" "I don't know." Lena sank back onto the bench, her hands twisting in her lap. "I don't know what I'm doing, or why I can't let this go. I just know that every time I'm around you and Mia, I feel like I can breathe, and then I go back to my life and it feels like suffocating." She laughed, but it sounded broken. "That's pathetic, isn't it? I'm a grown woman who's built a billion-dollar company, and I'm following a construction worker around because he's the only person who makes me feel human." "I'm a structural consultant," Caleb corrected, his mouth twitching despite himself. "Get it right." Lena looked up, startled, then laughed for real. "I'm sorry, that was condescending?" "Yeah." But Caleb's tone had softened. "Lena, I can't fix you. I can't teach you how to be happy or show you how to build a life that matters. That's work you have to do yourself." "I know." Lena wiped at her eyes roughly. "I'm not asking you to fix me. I don't know what I'm asking. Maybe just to not hate me for being so bad at this." Caleb studied her. She looked nothing like the composed CEO who'd cornered him in the trailer or the polished executive who'd sat across from him at lunch. She looked wrecked and real and achingly vulnerable. And despite every instinct telling him to maintain his distance, he couldn't bring himself to send her away. "I don't hate you," he said finally. "I think you're lost, and I think you're looking for answers in the wrong places. But I don't hate you." "Then what do I do?" Lena's voice was barely a whisper. "How do I stop feeling like this?" "You start small." Caleb gestured toward the park, the ducks, the city stretching beyond them. "You stop trying to solve it like a business problem. You stop looking for leverage or strategy or the perfect plan. You just show up, pay attention, let yourself feel things without trying to control them." "I don't know how to do that." "Neither did I, at first." Caleb leaned back against the bench. "When Vanessa left, I spent months trying to figure out how to fix it, how to make her come back, how to prove I could handle everything, how to be enough. And then one day Mia laughed at something stupid I did. I'd put her diaper on backwards, and I realized I was missing everything trying to fix something that was already over. So I stopped. I started paying attention to what was right in front of me instead of what I'd lost. And it got easier." Lena was quiet for a long time. "I'm afraid," she said finally, "that if I stop moving, stop working, stop doing, I'll realize there's nothing underneath, that I've spent my whole life building something empty." "Maybe," Caleb met her eyes, "or maybe you'll find out there's more there than you thought. You won't know until you try." "Ms. Lena," Mia's voice carried across the park. "Come help me. Gerald's being a jerk again." Lena laughed, wet and shaky, and stood. "I should go help," Caleb said. "I'll be here." He watched as Lena walked over to Mia, watched her crouch down and listen seriously as Mia explained the complex social dynamics of the duck pond, watched her throw bread with the kind of concentration most people reserved for important negotiations. And he thought about what Mia had said. Maybe you could teach her. Maybe he could. Or maybe she just needed someone to sit beside her while she figured it out herself. An hour later, after the bread was gone and Mia had extracted a promise from Lena to come back next weekend, they walked slowly toward the parking lot. Mia ran ahead, chasing a butterfly, leaving Caleb and Lena trailing behind in uncomfortable silence. "Thank you for letting me stay," Lena said finally. "I know I keep saying that, but I mean it. You didn't have to." "Mia wouldn't have forgiven me if I'd sent you away." Caleb smiled slightly. "She's got a soft spot for sad people. Last month, she made me give $20 to a guy with a cardboard sign because he looked like he needed a friend." "She's special," Lena said softly. "You're raising someone extraordinary." "I'm trying." Caleb's expression turned serious. "Look, Lena, if you want to keep coming around, we need to set some real boundaries. Not the fake professional ones we tried before. Actual ones." "Okay." Lena stopped walking. "Like what?" "Like you can't just show up whenever you feel lost. You text first. You ask. You respect it if I say no." Caleb ticked off points on his fingers. And you need to understand that Mia's going to get attached if you're around regularly. So if you're going to do this, you commit. You don't disappear when things get hard or when the novelty wears off. Because I won't let you break her heart. I wouldn't. You don't know that. Caleb's voice was firm but not unkind. You're still figuring out what you want and who you are. That's fine. But Mia's 6. She doesn't understand complexity. She just knows who shows up and who doesn't. So if you can't promise to show up, then we end this now. Lena swallowed hard. What if I mess up? What if I don't know how to do this right? Then you mess up and you apologize and you try again. Caleb's gaze was steady. That's what being in someone's life looks like. It's not perfect. It's just consistent. I can do consistent. Lena's voice was stronger now. I can show up. I want to show up. Not because I'm lonely or lost, but because... She paused, searching for the right words. Because being around you and Mia reminds me of who I want to be. And maybe that's selfish, but it's honest. Honest is good. Caleb started walking again. Honest is better than whatever game we were playing before. They reached the parking lot, where Mia was examining rocks near the curb with intense concentration. Lena pulled out her phone. So, next weekend? Same time? Text me first, Caleb reminded her. Don't just show up. Right, text first. Lena typed something into her phone. A moment later, Caleb's phone buzzed. Can I come to the park next Saturday to feed ducks with you and Mia? Caleb looked up at her, fighting a smile. You're texting me while standing 3 feet away? You said to text first. I'm establishing the pattern. Lena's expression was serious, but her eyes were bright with something that might have been hope. Caleb typed back. Yes. Bring muffins again. Mia loved them. Lena read the message and smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached her eyes. I'll bring enough for all of us this time. I noticed you barely ate yours. I was busy being suspicious of your motives. Fair. Lena pocketed her phone. I should go. Let you two get on with your day. Ms. Lena! Mia ran over, rock in hand. Look, it's shaped like a heart. It is, Lena agreed, examining it seriously. That's very lucky. You should keep it. I want you to have it. Mia pressed the rock into Lena's palm. So you remember that hearts are shaped weird, but that's what makes them good. Lena stared at the rock, then at Mia, then at Caleb, her expression dangerously close to tears. Thank you, Mia. I'll take good care of it. You better. Mia threw her arms around Lena's waist in a quick hug, then pulled back. Okay, bye. See you next week. She skipped toward Caleb's truck, already humming to herself. Caleb looked at Lena, who was still clutching the rock like it was made of gold. She's right, you know, he said quietly. About hearts being shaped weird. They're messy and imperfect, and they don't fit into neat categories. But that's what makes them worth having. I'm starting to understand that. Lena closed her fingers around the rock. Thank you, Caleb, for giving me another chance. Don't thank me yet. You haven't passed the consistency test. But his tone was gentle, almost teasing. Lena smiled. Watch me. She walked to her car, the same Mercedes model that had been crushed, still smelling faintly new, and drove away. Caleb stood in the parking lot for a moment, watching her go, wondering what the hell he just agreed to and why it didn't feel as dangerous as it should. That night, after Mia was in bed, Caleb called Marcus. So let me get this straight, Marcus said, after Caleb had explained the entire situation. The billionaire CEO showed up at your park with muffins, your 6-year-old basically told you to adopt her emotional well-being, and you agreed to weekly duck feeding sessions? When you say it like that, it sounds insane. Brother, it is insane, Marcus laughed. But also kind of beautiful? I don't know. I'm torn between telling you to run and asking when the wedding is. There's no wedding. This isn't... Caleb stopped. I don't even know what this is. She's not interested in me like that. She's just lost. You sure about that? Marcus's tone was skeptical. Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like she's very specifically lost in your direction. She needs a friend or a therapist, not a relationship. Caleb rubbed his face. And even if she did, I don't have room in my life for that kind of complication. I've got Mia to think about. Mia's the one who invited her to stay. Mia's 6. She doesn't understand. Mia understands more than you think. Marcus's voice was softer now. Look, man, I'm not saying you should marry this woman or move into her penthouse or whatever, but maybe it's okay to just let this be what it is. You help her figure her shit out, she brings muffins, everybody wins. And when she realizes that watching me pour concrete and raise a kid isn't actually the answer to her existential crisis, what happens then? Then you deal with it then. Marcus paused. Or maybe she doesn't realize that. Maybe she realizes that the life you've built, the one you keep apologizing for, is exactly what she's been missing. You ever consider that? Caleb hadn't. He'd been so focused on protecting what he had, on maintaining boundaries and managing expectations, that he hadn't stopped to think that maybe Lena saw something in his life that was worth learning from. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real. I gotta go, he said. Mia's got a soccer game tomorrow morning and I need to find her shin guards. Translation, you need to sit in the dark and overthink this conversation. That too. Caleb managed to smile. Thanks, Marcus. Anytime, brother. And hey, be careful. But also don't be too careful. You deserve good things too, you know. After they hung up, Caleb did exactly what Marcus predicted. He sat in the dark living room, listening to Mia's soft breathing from her bedroom, and tried to figure out how his carefully controlled life had suddenly become so complicated. But underneath the worry and the uncertainty, there was something else, something that felt dangerously close to hope. Lena drove home in a daze, the heart-shaped rock sitting in her cup holder like a talisman. She made it to her penthouse, walked straight to her dining room table, and finally picked up a brush. She mixed blue and green watercolors until they bled into something that might have been water, might have been sky, might have been the color of Mia's eyes when she laughed. It was terrible. The proportions were wrong. The technique was amateur. The whole thing looked like something a child might make. Lena loved it. She painted until her back ached and her fingers cramped, losing herself in the rhythm of brushstrokes and water and color. She painted the park, the ducks, the bench where she'd sat with Caleb and Mia. She painted without judgment, without trying to make it perfect, without thinking about what it meant or whether it was good enough. She just painted. When she finally stepped back, it was past midnight. The painting was a mess. Too much water in some places, not enough in others, colors that didn't quite work together. But it was hers. She'd made something that existed purely because she wanted it to, not because it served a purpose or advanced a goal or impressed anyone. It felt revolutionary. She took a picture and sent it to Caleb with a message, starting small. Thank you for the push. His response came a few minutes later. That's really good. Mia would love it. Then after a pause, you're going to be okay, Lena. She read those 5 words over and over until they felt true. The pattern held for 3 weeks. Every Saturday, Lena showed up at the park with muffins and an earnestness that would have been funny if it wasn't so raw. She fed ducks with Mia, listened to elaborate stories about Mr. Whisker's adventures, and learned the names of every regular at the duck pond. She asked questions, real ones, not the kind designed to steer conversations toward predetermined outcomes. She sat on benches and watched clouds and didn't check her phone every 5 minutes. Caleb watched her slowly, incrementally, learn how to exist without an agenda. But he also watched her struggle with the space between who she'd been and who she was trying to become. She still showed up in clothes that cost more than his monthly rent. She still sometimes caught herself starting to solve problems that weren't hers to solve. And there were moments when he could see her fighting the instinct to turn this, whatever this was, into something she could control. The breaking point came on a rainy Saturday in late October. Lena texted that morning. Still okay to meet? I know the weather's bad. Caleb looked out the window at the sheets of rain turning the street into a river and almost said no. But Mia was already at the door with her raincoat and boots, practically vibrating with excitement. We promised, Daddy. Mrs. Lena's going to be there. So they went. They found Lena waiting under the pavilion near the duck pond, soaked despite her expensive rain jacket, holding a bakery bag that had gone soft from moisture. She looked miserable and determined and strangely beautiful with her hair plastered to her face. The ducks are probably hiding, Caleb said by way of greeting. I know. Lena held up the soggy bag. But I promised muffins, so here I am. Mia took the bag carefully, examining the contents. They're kind of smooshy. They'll taste the same, Lena said. I think. They sat under the pavilion eating damp muffins and watching rain hammer the pond. The ducks were, as predicted, nowhere to be seen. It should have been depressing. Instead, it felt weirdly peaceful. Mia entertained herself by jumping in puddles, and Caleb found himself sitting close enough to Lena that their shoulders almost touched. "You didn't have to come," he said quietly. "We would have understood." "I wanted to." Lena pulled her knees up to her chest, making herself smaller. "This is the only thing I look forward to all week. Everything else is just..." She gestured vaguely. "Noise. You're still working 80-hour weeks?" "More, if I'm honest." Lena's voice was tired. "I keep trying to cut back, but there's always another deal, another crisis, another thing that supposedly only I can handle. And then Saturday comes and I remember that none of it actually matters." "It matters to someone," Caleb pointed out. "The people who work for you, the projects you're building, that stuff has value." "Does it?" Lena looked at him. "Because all I see is a treadmill I can't get off. I make money to make more money. I close deals to close bigger deals. And at the end of it, I'm still alone in a penthouse with nothing to show for it except a bank account I'll never spend and a reputation for being untouchable." Caleb was quiet for a moment. "You know what you need to do, don't you?" "What?" "Stop." He said it simply, like it was obvious. "Just stop. Take a break. Step back. Let someone else handle the deals and the crises for a while." Lena laughed, but it sounded hollow. "I can't just stop, Caleb. I have responsibilities, people depending on me." "So hire someone to pick up the slack." "Delegate. Take a sabbatical." Caleb turned to face her fully. "You're drowning, Lena, and you keep trying to swim harder instead of getting out of the water." "I don't know how to get out." Her voice cracked. "This is all I know. This is all I've ever been." "Then figure out who else you could be." Caleb's tone was gentle but firm. "But you can't do that while you're still buried in work. You need space to breathe, real space, not just Saturday mornings at a duck pond." Lena pressed her hands against her face. "What if I step back and realize I'm not actually good at anything else? What if work is the only thing I have?" "Then you'll know. And you can make a choice from there." Caleb waited until she looked at him. "But I think you already know the answer. You're just scared to admit it." Before Lena could respond, Mia splashed over to them, mud-streaked and grinning. "Ms. Lena, I found a worm. Do you want to see?" "Absolutely." Lena wiped her eyes quickly and stood, following Mia to examine the worm with appropriate reverence. Caleb watched them, thinking about the woman who'd sat across from him in a construction trailer months ago, and how little she resembled the person crouched in the mud right now, genuinely interested in a 6-year-old's discovery. When they finally headed back to the parking lot, rain still falling, Lena pulled Caleb aside while Mia ran ahead. "I'm going to take your advice," she said. "I'm going to step back from work. Really step back. I don't know for how long, but I need to try." "Good," Caleb smiled. "That's brave." "It's terrifying." Lena looked at him, her expression vulnerable. "Will you still let me come to the park, even if I'm around more than just Saturdays?" "Text first," Caleb reminded her. "But yeah, you can come." "Thank you." Lena hesitated, then, "Caleb, why are you doing this? Really? Why are you helping me?" Caleb considered the question. "Because you saved my life too," he said finally. "Just in a different way. You made me remember that wanting more doesn't make me a bad father, that using my actual skills doesn't mean I'm abandoning Mia. You didn't mean to, but you did. So maybe we're even." Lena's eyes went bright with tears, but she was smiling. "Maybe we are." Lena made good on her promise. She called an emergency board meeting Monday morning and announced she was taking a 6-month leave of absence. The room exploded into protests, concerns, and thinly veiled panic. She listened patiently, then explained she'd already arranged for her COO to take over day-to-day operations, that all major deals had contingency plans, and that this decision was non-negotiable. "But Ms. Ward," one board member sputtered, "what about the Singapore expansion, the merger talks, "Will all proceed without me," Lena interrupted calmly. "I've built an excellent team. It's time to let them prove it. And if the company can't survive 6 months without me personally micromanaging everything, then we have bigger problems than my sabbatical. She walked out before anyone could argue further, feeling lighter than she had in 20 years. The first week was brutal. She woke up at 5:30 out of habit, reached for her phone to check emails, then remembered she'd handed over access to her work accounts. She paced her penthouse like a caged animal, started and abandoned 3 different activities, and nearly called Derek twice to check on projects that were no longer her concern. By Wednesday, she was ready to crawl out of her skin. Thursday afternoon, she texted Caleb, "Are you busy? I'm losing my mind." His response came quickly. "Come to the site, south entrance. I'll take a break." Lena drove to Riverside and found Caleb waiting near the equipment shed, covered in dust but smiling. "That was fast. You okay?" "I don't know what to do with myself," Lena admitted. "I thought stepping back would feel freeing, but it just feels empty. I don't have anything to fill the space." "Then we need to find you something." Caleb gestured toward the construction site. "You ever actually walked through one of these? Like really looked at what we're building?" "Not really. I usually just review plans and approve budgets." "Come on." Caleb grabbed an extra hard hat and handed it to her. "Let me show you what your money is actually creating." He led her through the site, explaining the structure, pointing out features she'd never noticed, showing her how raw materials transformed into something permanent and real. His voice changed when he talked about buildings, became more animated, more confident, like he was finally speaking his native language. Lena found herself fascinated not just by the construction, but by watching Caleb inhabit this version of himself. "You should be doing this full time," she said when they paused near the foundation. "Not consulting occasionally, actually designing, building, leading projects." "Can't afford to go back to school," Caleb said simply. "And nobody's hiring structural engineers without completed degrees." "What if someone was?" Lena couldn't help herself. "What if there was a program that let you finish your degree while working? Paid for the classes, gave you flexible hours, set you up to transition into a real position when you graduated?" Caleb's expression shuddered immediately. "Lena, I'm not talking about me," she interrupted. "I'm not trying to buy you or fix your life. I'm talking about a program that should exist. For people like you who had to leave school for good reasons and deserve a second chance. What if I funded something like that? Not for you specifically, for everyone." Caleb stared at her. "You're serious?" "I'm serious." Lena felt energy spark through her for the first time in days. "I've been trying to figure out what matters, what I should do with all this money and influence. And this, helping people who got derailed finish what they started, this actually feels like it matters." "You'd do that?" "I'd do that." But Lena pulled out her phone, already making notes. "Not through my company, something separate, a foundation, maybe, with real support systems. Not just throwing money at the problem. Childcare assistance, flexible scheduling, mentorship programs, the things that actually make a difference." Caleb was quiet for a long moment. "If you build that, I'll be your first applicant." "Deal." Lena extended her hand. Caleb shook it, and something passed between them that felt bigger than a handshake, more significant than an agreement. It felt like partnership, like possibility. Over the next month, Lena threw herself into building the foundation with the same intensity she'd once reserved for hostile takeovers. But it felt different. She wasn't doing this to win or to prove something or to maintain control. She was doing it because it mattered, because she'd seen firsthand what happened when talented people got trapped by circumstances, and because Caleb had shown her what difference looked like. She brought him in as a consultant, which meant Tuesday and Thursday afternoons sitting in coffee shops arguing about program structure and admission criteria. Mia started joining them sometimes, doing homework at the table while the adults debated whether to include trade schools or focus solely on 4-year degrees. "Both," Mia said one afternoon, not looking up from her math worksheet. "Some people want to be engineers, some people want to fix cars. Both are important." Lena and Caleb stared at her. "She's right," Lena said finally. "Why are we limiting it?" "Because you're both still thinking too small," Mia continued, matter of fact. "You should help people who want to make art too, and music, and writing, not just building stuff. How did I raise such a wise kid? Caleb asked the universe. Good genes, Mia replied, still focused on her math. And you listen when I talk. The foundation launched in December with a mission statement Mia had helped write. Everyone deserves a second chance to build the life they were meant to live. The first cohort included Caleb and 19 other adults returning to school after life had interrupted their education. Lena hired staff, set up the infrastructure, and then, deliberately, painfully, stepped back to let them run it. It was the hardest thing she'd ever done, and the most rewarding. Top. Christmas came quietly. Lena spent Christmas Eve in her penthouse, wrapping presents for Mia. Art supplies, books, a stuffed duck she'd found that looked like Gerald, and wondering if showing up on Christmas morning with gifts was overstepping. She texted Caleb, "Is it weird if I bring presents tomorrow? I don't want to intrude on your traditions. Mia's been asking if you're coming every day this week. Bring the presents. And yourself. Dinner's at 2. Lena showed up at 1:30, nervous and overdressed, carrying bags that were definitely too much. Caleb answered the door in an apron that said Grill Master, which was objectively ridiculous since there was no grill in sight. You're early. I was anxious, Lena held up the bags. And I might have gone overboard. Might have? Caleb peered into one bag and laughed. Lena, come in. Mia's gonna lose her mind. She did. Mia opened each present with careful reverence, gasping over the art supplies, hugging the stuffed duck, and insisting that Gerald II needed a place of honor on her bed immediately. Then she handed Lena a wrapped package that was clearly a drawing based on the shape. I made you something, Mia said shyly, because you're learning to make art again, and Daddy says art is better when you share it. Lena unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a crayon drawing of 3 figures at a duck pond, one tall with yellow hair, one taller with dark hair, one small with curly hair. All 3 were smiling, their hands drawn in a way that suggested they were holding each other. At the bottom, in careful letters, Our Family. Lena's vision blurred. Mia, her voice cracked. This is perfect. I spelled family wrong, Mia admitted, but Ms. Parker says it's the thought that counts. Ms. Parker is very wise. Lena looked at Caleb, who was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Thank you, both of you, for letting me be part of this. Thank you for showing up, Caleb said simply. They ate dinner at the tiny kitchen table that barely fit 3 people, passing dishes of ham and potatoes and vegetables that Caleb had cooked with obvious care. They pulled crackers and wore paper crowns and told terrible jokes from the slips inside. Mia provided running commentary on everything, and Lena felt something settle in her chest that she'd been chasing for months, the feeling of belonging somewhere, of being wanted not for what she could provide but for who she was. After dinner, Mia fell asleep on the couch mid-Christmas movie, exhausted from excitement. Caleb covered her with a blanket while Lena started clearing dishes. They worked in comfortable silence, moving around each other in the small kitchen with an ease that felt practiced. She called us a family, Lena said quietly, setting a plate in the drying rack. I know. Caleb rinsed a pot. Is that okay? It's more than okay. Lena turned to face him. It's everything. But Caleb, I need to know what this is, what we are, because I don't want to assume and I don't want to push, but I also can't keep pretending I don't feel... She stopped, suddenly uncertain. Caleb dried his hands slowly, considering. What do you feel? Like I want to be here. Not just Saturdays, not just as Mia's friend. Here. Lena gestured at the cramped kitchen, the apartment that was too small and too worn, but somehow felt more like home than her penthouse ever had. With both of you, if that's something you want too. Lena. Caleb stepped closer. I've been trying not to want that since the day you showed up with muffins. But the thing is, I do want it. I want you here. Mia wants you here. But I need you to understand what you'd be signing up for. This isn't your world. It's grocery stores and parent-teacher conferences and budgets that don't stretch far enough. It's complicated and messy and nothing like what you're used to. I know. Lena reached for his hand. And I'm not trying to fix it or change it. I'm trying to be part of it, on its own terms. If you'll let me. Caleb looked at their joined hands, then at her face, searching for something. Whatever he found must have satisfied him, because he pulled her closer, his other hand coming up to cup her cheek. You're sure about this? Because once Mia's fully attached, there's no taking it back. She'll expect you at every school play and birthday party and random Tuesday. She'll want you in every part of her life. Good. Lena's voice was steady. Because I want to be in every part of her life. And yours. If you'll have me. I'll have you. Caleb smiled, and it transformed his whole face. We'll have you. Both of us. He kissed her then, soft and careful and full of promise. It wasn't the kiss of someone trying to possess or consume. It was the kiss of someone offering partnership, equality, home. When they pulled apart, Lena was crying again, but this time from joy. I'm going to mess this up sometimes, she warned. I'm going to fall back into old patterns and try to solve problems that aren't mine and probably buy Mia inappropriate gifts. Probably, Caleb agreed. And I'll call you on it and we'll figure it out together. That's how this works. Together. Lena tested the word, liked how it felt. I can do together. They finished the dishes side by side and Lena stayed until Mia woke up from her nap, groggy and demanding hot chocolate. They made it together, the three of them crowded in the tiny kitchen, and it was perfect in its imperfection. Spring came with the kind of gentle warmth that made everything feel possible. Caleb finished his first semester back at school with grades that made his advisors talk about graduate programs. The foundation expanded to 3 more cities, and Lena bought a smaller apartment, not in Caleb's building, but close enough that walking between them took 10 minutes instead of an hour-long drive. I'm not giving up the penthouse completely, she explained to Caleb one Saturday at the park. I'm renting it out for events, fundraisers mostly, for the foundation and other causes. But I needed something that felt like mine, not just a monument to everything I used to be. Good call. Caleb watched Mia chase ducks with her friend from school, both girls laughing so hard they could barely run. How's it feel? Scary. Right. Both at once. Lena leaned against him, his arm coming around her shoulders automatically. I keep waiting for it to feel wrong, or for me to miss my old life. But I don't. I just keep feeling grateful I found this one. Found us, you mean? Found you, Lena corrected. Both of you, my family. They'd made it official a month ago, not with rings or ceremonies, but with Lena moving a toothbrush into Caleb's bathroom, and Caleb giving her a key and Mia announcing to her entire class that she had 2 houses now, but really one family. The school had sent home a note asking for clarification on emergency contacts, and Caleb had listed Lena without hesitation. Daddy, Ms. Lena! Mia ran over, breathless and muddy. Can we get ice cream? Me and Sarah want to celebrate. Celebrate what? Caleb asked. Spring, and ducks, and families. Mia grabbed both their hands. Please? Caleb looked at Lena, who was already nodding. Ice cream sounds perfect, Lena said. They walked to the ice cream shop, Mia between them, swinging their joined hands and chattering about her art project and the book they were reading in class and whether Gerald would like strawberry or chocolate ice cream better. Lena listened to it all, this beautiful, ordinary chaos, and thought about the woman who'd sat in a crushed car months ago, convinced she had everything figured out. That woman had been so wrong and so lost. This woman, the one holding hands with a 6-year-old and her father, debating ice cream flavors, wearing jeans that had actual mud stains, this woman was found. Finally, completely found. 2 years later, on a Saturday morning that felt exactly like the first one, Lena stood in front of the foundation's new building and watched Caleb cut the ribbon. He was giving the speech, not her, talking about second chances and the people who believed in them, and how education changed lives when you removed the barriers that kept people out. His voice was steady and sure, and Lena felt pride swell in her chest so big it almost hurt. Mia, now 8 and even more precocious, stood beside Lena in a dress she'd insisted on wearing despite it being too fancy for just ribbon cutting. Daddy's really good at talking now, she whispered. You helped with that. He was always good at talking, Lena whispered back. He just needed the right audience. And you needed the right family. Mia slipped her hand into Lena's with the casual affection of a child who'd never doubted her place. It worked out good. It worked out very good, Lena agreed. The ceremony ended with applause and photos, and too many people wanting to talk to both Caleb and Lena about their story. They'd become something of a symbol, the CEO who stepped back to find herself and the construction worker who got his second chance. Lena hated the attention. She'd learned that the work mattered more than the recognition, that impact measured in changed lives was better than impact measured in dollars. But she tolerated it because it helped the foundation, and because Caleb was better at handling it than she was, and because Mia thought it was hilarious that people kept asking for selfies. That evening, after the crowds dispersed and the building closed, the three of them returned to the duck pond. It had become tradition. Every major milestone ended here, where everything had started. They sat on their usual bench, feeding bread to ducks who'd probably been fed too much already that day. "Ms. Parker says I should write an essay about who inspires me," Mia announced. "I'm going to write about both of you." "Both of us?" Caleb looked surprised. "What are you going to say?" "That you taught me that love is showing up, even when it's hard, and that fixing things is important, but building things is better." Mia threw bread to Gerald, who caught it midair with impressive accuracy. "And that families aren't just about who you're born to, they're about who chooses to stay." Lena's eyes burned with sudden tears. After 2 years, Mia still had this ability to cut straight to the heart of things with observations that shouldn't be possible from someone so young. "That's beautiful, Bug," she managed. "I know." Mia grinned at them. "I'm pretty smart." "The smartest," Caleb confirmed. He looked at Lena over Mia's head, his expression soft with the kind of love that had grown slowly, steadily, built on foundation of friendship and respect and showing up. "What do you think, Lena? Did we build something good?" Lena looked at the man beside her, the one who'd saved her life and then taught her how to live it. She looked at the girl between them, who'd somehow claimed them both as hers and transformed everything. She looked at the duck pond and the park and the city beyond, full of people they were helping find their way back to dreams they'd had to abandon. "We built something extraordinary," she said, "and we're not done yet." Caleb leaned over and kissed her, soft and sure, while Mia made exaggerated gagging noises that dissolved into giggles. They stayed at the park until sunset painted everything gold, until the ducks settled in for the night, until Mia started yawning despite her protests that she wasn't tired. They walked home together through streets that had stopped feeling foreign to Lena months ago. Home wasn't the apartment they shared now, wasn't the foundation building or the park or any specific location. Home was these two people beside her, was the life they'd built piece by piece from honesty and patience and the radical decision to choose each other every day. That night, after Mia was asleep with Gerald II tucked under her arm, Caleb found Lena standing at the window looking out at the city. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "No regrets?" he asked quietly. "Not one." Lena leaned back into him. "You?" "Just one," Caleb admitted. She tensed, but he continued before she could spiral. "I regret that it took a near-death experience for us to find each other, but I'm grateful we did." "Me too." Lena turned in his arms, looking up at him. "Thank you for seeing me, for giving me a chance when you had every reason not to, for teaching me what matters." "Thank you for listening," Caleb said, "and for being brave enough to change. That wasn't easy." "Nothing worth having is easy," Lena smiled. "Someone very wise taught me that." Must have been Mia. Definitely Mia. They stood there in the comfortable silence of people who'd learned each other's rhythms, who'd weathered uncertainty and come out stronger. Outside, the city continued its endless movement, full of people chasing success and status and all the things Lena used to think mattered. Inside, she had everything she needed. Not because she'd acquired it or earned it or built it single-handedly, but because she'd learned to stop building walls and start building bridges. Because she'd learned that sometimes the greatest strength was admitting you needed help. Because a man in worn jeans had pulled her from a wreckage, not just physical, but existential, and showed her what living actually looked like. In the other room, Mia called out in her sleep, something unintelligible about ducks and ice cream. Caleb smiled against Lena's hair. "She's dreaming about food again. She gets that from you. She gets everything good from both of us." Caleb pulled back to look at her. "And she's going to do amazing things, Lena, because she's growing up knowing that love isn't transactional, that success isn't measured in dollars, and that the best things in life are the ones you build with other people. We're going to make sure of it, Lena said firmly. All three of us, together. Together, Caleb echoed. It was a promise and a commitment and a future stretching out before them, imperfect and uncertain and absolutely right. They'd built it from rubble and second chances, from duck ponds and watercolors, from the radical act of showing up consistently and choosing each other over and over again. And in the end, that was more than enough. It was everything. From Mia's room came a sleepy voice, "Group hug first, always." They looked at each other and laughed, then went to fulfill the rule their daughter had established months ago. Group hug first, always. Before bed, before school, before anything important. A reminder that they were a unit now, that they chose each other, that this imperfect, beautiful family they'd built was worth protecting. Caleb and Lena squeezed into Mia's small room, wrapped their arms around their daughter, and held on tight. And in that moment, with the three of them tangled together in the gentle darkness, everything that had been broken was finally, completely whole.